we gather together again to do the work of our association. May we be as present now as we can be, and may the mutuality of our shared covenant connect us and sustain us on the journey. Today's reports agenda includes in the following order: the board report, a conversation with incoming co-moderators Meg Riley and Charles Dumont, and closing words.
Selection of candidates for moderator. Background. The last elected moderator of the UUA was Jim Key, who was elected in 2014 for a term that would end in 2019. Jim Key resigned in 2017 and died shortly thereafter. The Board of Trustees selected Mr. Barb Grieve and Alandria Williams to complete his term. In 2019, the Moderator Search Committee reported that they had found no suitable candidates. The UUA board asked for the forbearance of the association to postpone the election of a new moderator until 2020. Selecting the candidates for the new moderator was a major project for the board in the 2019-2020 term. At the post-GA board meeting, June of 2019, the current board delayed the reappointment of Mr. Barb Grieve and Alandria Williams as co-moderators with the following statement. In recognition of the magnitude of the office of moderator, the pressures put on the humans holding the position, and our need to make it more sustainable, the UUA Board of Trustees, in collaboration with Alandria Williams, Mr. Barb Grieve, and the UUA administration, is embarking on a process to better divide and balance the work, with consideration for co-moderator portfolios and shared responsibility within the board. The board seeks to complete this work by the end of August, at which time the board expects to reappoint Alandria and Barb as co-moderators until a special election for moderator can be held at General Assembly 2020. At the August 2019 meeting, the board considered and revised the job application developed by the Moderator Search Committee. In September of 2019, the Moderator Search Committee reported that it had received no applications for the moderator position. The Moderator Search Committee and the board members were encouraged to actively seek out additional potential nominees. In October, the board received the Moderator Search Committee's recommendations for candidates. More candidates had been found. On November 18, 2019, and after long consideration, the board unanimously approved the motion that follows. The UUA Board of Trustees nominates Meg Riley and Charles Dumont jointly to the position of moderator for the special election to take place at General Assembly in June of 2020, to complete the unfilled term that began in 2019 and which expires at the end of General Assembly in June of 2025. Members noted their intent to actively support the nominated team. With the 2020 election, the UUA will return to the process mandated by the bylaws. Moderators elected by the entire UUA as represented in a General Assembly.
Establishing the Article 2 Commission. In 2017, the General Assembly approved a resolution directing the board to organize an Article 2 study commission. The commission's task would be to revise our principles and purposes, which were last changed in 1987, so that our faith may adapt to current needs and support of our congregations and covenanted communities as forces for spiritual and moral growth, healing, and justice. Last spring we had drafted a structure and charge for this commission, but no commission has been appointed yet. In October we established an Article 2 Commission working group within the board. This working group revised the charge to incorporate the feedback from last spring and anticipated the work of the Commission on Institutional Change. This group was also tasked with developing a timeline and structure for the Commission. In January, we received a revised charge and timeline. After brainstorming and discussion in the larger group, the working group agreed to make some final edits to the charge. We also began brainstorming some names for direct, personal asks to apply for the position on the Commission, and to put out an open application available to all via the UUA website. In February, we accepted the final text of the Article 2 Studies Commission charge. This charge is centered around using love as a guiding force and running an inclusive study with participation of the Unitarian Universalists from all demographics and communities. Over the course of the spring, we have reached out to Unitarian Universalists from all over the areas with direct personal asks to submit a volunteer application for the Article 2 Study Commission. In April and May, we began receiving applications. These applications will be reviewed, and then we will be choosing people to recommend to the nominating committee.
The third section is working with the Commission on Institutional Change, which was a large part of what we did this past year. This year, the board has continued to work with the Commission on Institutional Change, also known as the COIC, receiving interim reports, briefings, and updates as the Commission saw fit. As a matter of practice, the board has continued to explicitly include the Commission's representatives in all meetings of the board, both regular and executive sessions, so that the COIC could see what was going on, monitor behavior, assumptions, and practices for feedback, and to enable them to have a clear view of the board's culture for them to include in the formal commentary, critique, and advice of their final report. Their relationship has been a useful one, both in helping the board continue to move our practices and culture, something the board has been engaged in for some years, and in revealing how the board operates as seen through the eyes of observers. The relationship has, we believe, always been appreciative and respectful. There have been, as should be expected, moments of miscommunication and misunderstanding, but both the board and the Commission on Institutional Change have labored to remain respectful, engaged, and in right relations with one another. The board charged the COIC. It welcomes and has gratefully received and accepted the Commission on Institutional Change's report. We have a broad consensus to move forward on the basis of that report, paying close attention to its findings, and in conversation and collaboration with the UUA administration to generally implement the COIC's recommendations, including the budgeting of those recommendations. Those are the three major areas that your Unitarian Universalist Board of Trustees worked on in the past year. Of course, we were challenged, as many of us were at the end of the January, February, to deal with changes with General Assembly, changes in our culture, changes in lifting up that Black Lives Matter. So this has been a busy and a trying year and a fulfilling year. And we are grateful for the relationship with the UUA administration and staff, with all of our volunteer organizations, with the Commission on Institutional Change, and the upcoming Commission to study Article 2. Be well, my friends. Thank you for supporting your UUA Board of Trustees.
Hi, I'm Barb Grieve, one of the outgoing co-moderators of the UUA, and am delighted to be in conversation with my co-moderator, Alandria, and our incoming moderators, co-moderators, Charles and Meg. I'll let everybody introduce themselves before we get started.
And hi, I'm the other half of the co-mod team, the B team, Alandria Williams, and I go by E. Arlandria, and I'm in Powell, Tennessee, and super excited to be having this conversation with you all today.
Hi, I'm Charles Dumond, and I'm in San Mateo, California, and I'm very excited to be in this conversation with all four of you.
I'm Meg Riley. I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I am also very delighted to be here with my teachers, Barb and Alandria, and my co-moderator, incoming, Charles Dumond.
So I was thinking back to when Landry and I, when we started as co-moderators, and thinking about just a few of the things that were in place or shaping up as we were arriving. And for me, one of those things that jumps out is that you and I, E, as well as Susan Frederick Gray, president of the UUA, who just been elected, and Carrie McDonald, who became our executive vice president, all came into our positions at the same time, which hadn't really happened in the history of our association since the beginning of the association structure.
Yeah, and I remember having a conversation with Susan. I was doing something and was saying that there was no way it could be worse, right? Like it could only go up, right? It can only go up from here. Like none of the four of us had baggage with each other. None of the four of us had like all these stories. We were all like, how do we make our association better? And it's all four of us group as Unitarian Universalists, which actually has power in it to be like, we may grow up in 4 different places. We may live different places now, but like we all are rooted in our tradition and where we want to go, and are younger with different identities than a lot of times the leadership has had. And so really came from different places, but also similar places about where we wanted our faith to be and where we thought it was possible to go.
And interestingly, we span about a 9 or a 10-year difference in age from the youngest to the oldest of us. And in youth movements, right, that's 2 or 3 generations of youth. And yet we all came with a very similar grounding in who we are as a people of faith and how our structures could be adjusted and adapted to be more representative of a leadership structure that we were enculturated with in our youth days.
And I think the last thing I would say is I feel like all of us have been loved up by our faith and heartbroken, right? So we didn't come in with rose-colored glasses like this is going to be the most perfect thing that's ever been produced. All of us had programs that we worked on, got taken away. I mean, the other thing that I realized when I first went into the UUA as the moderator role is that Barbara and I also both worked for the UUA. So it was also the first time in which you had co-moderators actually having worked for the Unitarian Universal Association, knowing a ton of staff people, and recognizing what it meant to be both on both sides of the equation as volunteers and as staff, which meant that we really wanted to support the staff and what they were doing and not just be like, we're going to complain all the time, because we understood what it meant for people to complain on us, not knowing what we were actually trying to do anyway, right? And so I feel like over the last 3 years, there's been some really beautiful shifts around how do we actually work together to move a thing and not try to be competing for who's going to be the grand puma of the UUA.
Right. And I would add to that not only did we work at the UUA, you know, because for both of us, it's been almost 20 years since we worked at the UUA, but we both stayed connected to national movements within Unitarian Universalism. And so fostered that relationship with both staff and leaders of other UU organizations. And we're committed to keeping those relationships strong throughout the course of our time together.
And, you know, I feel like when we did the blue vote, you know, I was on the board then. And it was really hard to figure out, can I still be in the Black Lives of UU? Do I have to step out? People are like, you need to step off because you're on the board, and lost support for a year. And so I feel like when we came in as commanders, like, we don't want that to happen. We don't want all the people that are on our board that are marginalized to lose community. That's not fair. So I actually feel like over the last 3 years, we've been really trying to navigate how do we stay in community and not lose it? Because the second you lose your community, you have nothing to hold on to. And it made the job, I actually think, harder the first year. Like, I think it's actually easier now that we are like more grounded in and are like, how do we have a both and philosophy and know when it's time to be all the way engaged and when is it time to not be? When is it time to say something when you need to like just pause for a minute and let other people, you know, share voice?
And I think that's also indicative of just our general relationship, not ours, but like as a people of faith, our relationship to authority. I had a similar experience as I came into the moderatorship with Trust, the trans religious UU group, and that, you know, it's a group that I had helped start, and yet we weren't sure how to be in relationship together when I became the co-moderator, and we still struggle with that. So, you know, likewise, my hope is that as we continue to build pathways of leadership from among our people to the board or to other national committees, that we're paying attention to, and this is a hint, Megan Charles, we're paying attention to how we do some work within the identity groups so that the relationship to the UUA, right, that authority doesn't get up in the way of people being able to be in both leadership and with their communities.
Amen. Y'all have done such amazing work to shift the culture, to be so collaborative and to be really inviting in all the people. It's been really inspiring to watch the transformation. And you clearly blazed a trail that Charles and I could not be coming in as co-moderators if you hadn't done that. And I'm here in Minnesota, people go cross-country skiing, and I'm really aware of the difference between when you're starting a trail and when you're following a trail. It's two very different things. So we owe you a huge debt of gratitude, because I don't think anyone but you will ever know all of the things you had to remove in order to blaze that trail. So, you know, clearly we don't come in with the same identities, but I think that we do come in with the same commitment to relationships and a very flat hierarchy and a deep commitment to being in community with our people of faith. I also grew up in this faith, and I also served in the youth office, where I saw a couple of generations come by, and you know, that's where the energy is. And that's, you know, we're older, we're white, you know, and we're cisgender, and I think we're here in part because we're so excited by the movement and where it's going, and the culture of Unitarian Universalism changing, the faith deepening, but the culture radically altering so that people are not marginalized and hurt the way that they have been. So the work that you've done, you know, the work that the Commission on Institutional Change has done gives us a blueprint for coming in, that the board's accepted to move into those changes. And you know, the way I see it, other people will be, and forgive me for using a football metaphor, I'm the least possible person to do it. But, you know, we see people running with the ball down the field. Our goal is to not let them get stopped. Our goal is to block anybody who tries to stop the really positive movement of both the administration and all kinds of professional organizations and leadership of identity groups and others that's moving in really exciting directions.
Yeah, I clearly represent that demographic of old white guys, cisgendered. So I know that my role is to facilitate, to make space, to listen to the younger, more interesting voices that that are rising, to come from those places where people haven't always listened. And I just so deeply appreciate the work that you two have done, because, you know, I was on that search committee for the moderator that found no one. And it was just, the job was too big. That search committee came back and offered that the board should make the opportunity for people to be part of a co-moderating team a reality. And then you two have demonstrated how to do that work and given us, you know, a whole, you know, Meg describes it as the cross-country skiing, and there's a lot of sports metaphors, cross-country skiing, football. I played football. I got the knees to prove that I played football. And so I know a little bit about blocking and trying to create paths for others. So I'm looking forward to just continuing the work that you two have started.
And you know, the thing I would say is I feel like so many of the committees of our association have done some of the most incredible work, right? And I think sometimes we neglect them. And so I feel like a lot of the work that Barb and I have done in the last 3 years is tell people we actually appreciate them. And thank you. I mean, like, I went to the investment committee meetings because I think endowments or investments are where you put your values, and money where you put your values. And I was like, when's the last time the moderators come? They were like, I was like, how many times? They're like, one. I was like, oh, when before? They're like, right now. And I was like, right now? And they were like, yeah, they haven't been in since the empowerment controversy. I was like, whoa. So I think like and they literally are like leading the way nationally around like what it means to shift endowments to really give to people of color led funds and give to like, and to really shift, and what it means that we don't even know, a lot of us don't even know what's happening. There's so many things behind the scenes that are happening that a lot of times we don't even know or recognize. And so when we talk about the good work of the Unitarian Universalist Association, we mostly talk about people being in yellow shirts on the street, but we're not actually talking about the places in which we have the most leverage, which are actually in sometimes those endowment funds and like the books we publish and how we're changing the narrative and like what it means. And so and it's not that we shouldn't talk about all the identity groups, but there are moments you actually have to talk about what your own institution is doing. I remember the first time hearing that we had literally still been supporting like the families of people who had been killed in the civil rights movement, and it was in our budget. And I was like, what are you talking about? Nobody even knew, right? And I'm like, we are doing beautiful work for decades that is like so hidden that when we're like complaining about the UUA, we don't even understand that we are also spending money in beautiful ways and supporting, and we don't even know it. And so I think it's also sometimes, I also think it's the job of us to uplift the beautiful things that are happening that people don't even know because it's inspirational, right? It's like, I feel like our job is to be the inspirers and to say, yes, we have change to make. And here are the beautiful things that we are doing that you can hold on to be like, it is a both and. It is not an either or, it's a both and to have people not move out of scarcity. Because I feel like a lot, that's like white supremacy culture, right? It's scarcity mentality. We cannot do this and that. Like, we cannot count everybody's and their gender they say they are and do racial. Like, we must do all the, like, that's to me a scarcity model or either or thinking. And so I feel like one thing we tried to do is to be like, how do we not acknowledge, I think that like hierarchy exists in the world, right? I think that like, it's just real, whether it's spoken or unspoken. So how do you not acknowledge, you must acknowledge the power you sit in and go, how do we open this space up so that people feel like they have, so that they not feel like, so that they know that they have voice and power, right? So it's like the both and I also believe it's really going to be important how we do our own organizing internally when people agree with us is different than if people don't agree with us. And so that to me is actually going to be the biggest change and the biggest thing that's ahead of us, because people in our movement organize like we the enemy. And I'm like, we for you. Like, I'm probably more left than you. What you doing? I've been doing the work longer than you. What's your problem? So I feel like that's part of the thing is like how we learn to build collectively and not do this all the time. I actually think is the greatest cultural shift that we're going to have to do in our faith.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, one of the biggest surprises that I experienced in the role of co-moderator was how often, despite the two of us and really the whole board and administration demographically shifting, how often we were still the evil board, right? As if we were the enemy just by the inherent being of being on the board. And Charles, I think this is where you in particular, given your demographic, have a special role in that not only is it your responsibility, yours and Meg's, both to listen to and nurture up the youth, but to also model and help our elders shift out of that old dynamic of the board equals authority equals evil.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And there are lots of conversations to be had with, you know, those who are, I don't know if the word, I don't want to use the word frightened, but somehow it's in that ballpark, that fear related thing, and it's really not, it's not appropriate. That there's love here. That's what this movement is about.
Yeah, Charles and I met through Side with Love. We both worked on that campaign, 12 years ago, and since then have worked together in a variety of capacities. But yeah, and I think that y'all have framed it really well this way too, that we're building something created out of love. And love includes anger, and love includes heartbreak, and love includes a lot of things, but yet it's still built out of love. And you know, I have no illusions that this is going to be easy, but I feel very grateful for the life that Unitarian Universalism has given me. I feel like I'm a better person for being called into accountability with who I want to be. And I'm very, very grateful. I'm super grateful to you two. I mean, really, you're in my prayers every day. And I know that it's been sacrificial giving that you've done. I hope the whole movement appreciates how it is, because truthfully for me, I'm retiring from professional work. This is a big job. I am in awe that you two managed to do it while holding down jobs, because it's too big. The truth of the matter is it's too big. And Charles and I come in with a commitment to make it accessible to other people after us. Because it shouldn't be that only old, either people who want to be completely stressed out all the time and never stop, or older people who are retired, or maybe independently wealthy people who don't need to work. But it should be that anyone who wants to do this and is called to do this could do it. And that's our commitment, is to really build leadership pipelines everywhere we can, to welcome in all the leadership, to share the load, to hold it together. Minneapolis right now is on the map for this uprising. And I need to tell you about the amazing leadership in my city. I mean, there are young queer Black people on the city council, on the county commission, in the streets, in every part of leadership. And it makes such a difference. It just means everything. So whether you're working on a committee or, you are wearing a yellow shirt in the street, it all really matters. And this feels like a way that at this stage of life, I can be of service.
Charles Barb, closing comments.
I'll just offer first gratitude, E, to you for being a partner for 3 years. This has been an amazing journey. I'm a better leader because of our partnership. So thank you for that. Meg and Charles, thank you for saying yes. It's been one of the most amazing things I've done in my lifetime, one of the hardest things I've done, and also I'm exhausted. So happy to pass the football to you.
Footballs again. So I will accept something in a non-sports way. I'm not sure what, but
I think you technically get the gavel.
a gavel, very well, the classic gavel. So yeah, appreciation again to both of you. And I think what you've created for us is a vision of how collaborative leadership can be done, and we have this commitment to collaborative leadership going forward. And the voices and lifting up lots of voices in a collaborative way. I think that's really the key to it all. So thank you.
And I'll just say, Barb, love you from depth of soul. Thank you for being my teacher for a long time. Same to you, Meg and Charles. And we'll just say, I don't know the next time a person of color will have this position. I don't know the next time a trans person will have a position. I identify not as a she, but as a genderqueer person. Don't know. But we'll say that it has been an honor and a blessing for both of us to be able to lead our faith. I would love for people to not say that you cannot do this job unless you are blah, 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 because let me tell you, I work probably harder and longer than most people by like a long shot. And so does Barb. And so think we are actually saying rhetoric and not reality. Because I work 90 to 100 hours a week, getting people out of incarceration, deportations, and things that most UUs do not do in their lives. And did it working at the Highlander Center and now running an organization on top of and on top of. And so I think we must get rid of some things that we have allowed to perpetuate. And so want to encourage both of you actually to change the language. Because if Barb and I can do the job, then anybody can do the job. Because we actually work really hard hours and long. And so don't like self-perpetuating foolishness. So sorry. Think it's actually supremacist, and tell people that what they really need to not do is about time. It's about length of time in the movement. It's about actually have you done the work and built the relationships necessary so that when I call you on the phone, you answer and say, I answer the call. Because I really will want to leave with saying the board moved up. The board has really, I want to say giant thank you to the board. I know Barb and I really giant thank you to the board because the board has been with us every step of the way, shaping what our faith looks like and changing what it means to be the moderator. And so it is not the moderator of Jenny Davidoff. We are not the moderators of Jenny. We are a whole other breed that moves with the board to collectively go in the administration. And so I think it's really important to lift that up as we close so people understand we're moving in whole different times. Love you all. Thank you very much.
Moderators who are people of color and trans will be paid for their work. I'm just saying transformation can also happen.
Well, yes, of course. I mean, you know, that's not, I would never argue with that. I'm just saying. It's not, I think, no, yeah, of course. Of course. People just get remunerated sometimes. And sometimes they need to be like my grandmama and not get paid and do volunteer work. That's not, we're going to cut that out of the all right.
All right. I was gonna throw in, you know, one of the things the challenges that we had, of course, we came into our position because our immediate predecessor had died, which, you know, was its own heartbreak. But I want to offer to you, Megan, Charles, and I'm trusting that E's going to go with me on this, that when you call us, we will pick up.
Yep.
You know, whether it's to ask for the history or to just throw ideas around, or for, you know, us to use our authority in any way we can to help support you and the board and the administration in continuing to move forward. You call and we will answer.
And there's still a lot of work to be done that some of us are going to have to help do, right? And so we don't want it to be like, oh, we're like out for the count, because Lord knows we didn't have all the support we needed as we came in, and want to show what transition looks like. That's beautiful. Like, I think that's one thing. It's like, how do we show beautiful transition when people actually like each other and love each other and want our faith to be better?
I invite you to join me in this brief prayer for understanding, call to compassion, and invitation to mercy. Spirit of life, in the midst of the uncertain and on the precipice of the yet unseen, remind us to consider the needs of our neighbors and to respond where we are able. Help us to be more compassionate than self-centered in the face of tight resources. Encourage us to deal without a harsh hand, summoning a smile and a kind word to alleviate our mutual distresses. Help us to emerge from this moment ever mindful of the need for community, for care, for kindness, and for forbearance with each other in difficult times. As we consider how we might respond to ourselves and others in this challenging time, we invite you to also consider the words of poet, writer, commentator, activist, and educator, Nikki Giovanni. She says, "There is always something to do. There are hungry people to feed, naked people to clothe, sick people to comfort and make well. And while I don't expect you to save the world, I do think it's not asking too much for you to love those with whom you sleep, share the happiness of those whom you call friend, engage those among you who are visionary, and remove from your life those who offer you depression, despair, and disrespect. Ashe, amen, and blessed be." Thank you for joining us today.